Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to start MERN development by creating our very first Node.js server and creating our very first API endpoint. MERN stands for MongoDB, ExpressJS, React, and Node.js. All four of these technologies combine to form a powerful technology stack which can be used for web development. We are going to start developing our MERN application inside Visual Studio Code. If you haven't already set up and installed this software, I'd highly recommend that you check out the other video that we have on the channel in which we've shown you how to set up and install VSCode. So to develop our MERN application, there's two main technologies that we need to get started on the backend. These are Node.js and ExpressJS. Both of these technologies work together in combination and form the backbone of many web applications. Node.js is basically what powers our server. It's going to allow us to execute JavaScript code outside the browser. So basically, it's going to power our server. And what ExpressJS is going to do is that it provides the structure and tools that we need to build web applications. So yes, so we need both of these technologies. To get started, we're going to create a new folder. So I'm just going to go over here and create a new folder. You can name it whatever you want. You can put it wherever you want. I'm just creating a simple folder on the desktop and naming it MERN application. So once this is done, I'm just going to go ahead and click on create and open this folder in VS Code. And so we have this folder open here. You can see it says MERN application in the Explorer. So I can see that it's been opened. Now all I need to do here is create a new node application inside this folder. How am I going to do that? I'm going to open the terminal. So click on view and then click on terminal. And this is going to open up the terminal inside your VS Code if you don't see it already. And over here, I need to type a special command that using the package manager that we just installed a while ago. So I'm going to type npm init and then -y. And this is going to set up the node folder structure for us. So you can see a package or JSON file has been created inside our folder, which means that we're going on the right track. So once you're sure that your package or JSON file has been created, we're going to go and run a few more commands to set up everything we need for our node project. So just type in the next command, which is npm install express. And this is going to install the Express framework in our folder inside our project. Once this is done, you should see a new folder named node modules and two JSON files. One is package.json and the other is package.lock.json. Next, we want to install Mongoose as well so that we can connect with our database. So just type in npm install Mongoose and you can see that it's downloading now. And that's it. That's the main two things that we need to get started. So I'm just going to go over back into our main back into our folder, which is the MERN application folder that I created. And I'm going to create a new file. And this file is going to be called server.js. So just click on this icon to create a new file and then type in the name server.js. And this is our JS file where we're going to create our server. Let's just get the terminal out of the way and let's start creating our server. The first thing we need to do is actually import our Express package into this file. How do we do that in Node? So we're going to write in const. So this is the syntax to import in Node.js. So we can write const express equals, and then we're going to write require, and then in parentheses we're going to write express. So you want to remember this syntax. This is how we're going to import anything into our project when we're working on the server side. Next, we actually want to use this Express package that we imported to create an app. So I'm going to create a const variable called app and just use the Express function. And this is going to create an app inside my server, which we can use for routing and other useful things we're going to see as we move forward. Next, let's create a port. This is where we need to define which port our server is going to run on. I'm just going to make it 3000 for now. And lastly, we need to make sure that our app is listening on this port. How are we going to do that? So this is where Express comes in. It's going to provide us a really easy function that we can use to make sure that our app is listening. So listening is like telling your app to, kind of listen for visitors on a specific address and port. So we're going to use the member function. Let's just type an app.listen. The first argument is going to be the port that we just defined up above, and the second one is going to be a function. So I'm creating a JavaScript arrow function right here. If you don't remember what an arrow function is, I would recommend that you brush up on your basic JavaScript first before starting this course. Now we've created this arrow function. I'm just going to make it really simple. Let's put a simple console.log here. And let's just type something like server is listening on the port. And let's also just type in our port just for good measure. So we can just add in that port and print it as well. Now, how are we going to run this server? How do we actually run this server? So it's going to be pretty straightforward. All we need to do is go over into our terminal, and we're going to type a simple command to run our server, which is node plus the name of our file, which is server.js. And here we can see this message is displayed: server is listening on port 3000, which is great because that means we've successfully set up and run our node server. Now the next thing we're going to do is create one simple and basic API endpoint in our application. To do this, we're once again going to use Express. So I'm typing here app.get, and then this is basically a member function that's going to allow us to send a GET request to our application. So the type of the request is going to be GET, as we can tell by the name of the function. And this function is going to take two arguments. This function call is going to take two arguments. The first is going to be the path that we want our request to be sent to. So I'm just typing slash, which is the root path. So I'm saying that when I get HTTP request is sent to our application on the root URL, so which is just going to be the base URL, I want it to execute this function. And the function, I'm going to define it as an arrow function, is going to take two parameters, which is the request and response objects. So I'm creating the arrow function right here. And I'll just explain what this does in a minute. For now, I'm just going to show you that I'm going to send a response in this function, and that's going to be a simple hello world message. So I just type that in right here, and this is our response. So I'm just going to explain what this actually is doing. Um, what we're saying here is that we have two objects. The first one is the request object, and this is going to give us all the information about the request that has been sent on this particular endpoint. And the response object is going to allow us to send a response back to the client. In this case, the response is just a simple hello world message. Now, how do we actually test this endpoint? How do we actually send a request to this endpoint? Well, for this, I want you to go over into your extensions right here. And here, I want you to search Thunder Client. So we're looking for Thunder Client. And this is an extension that is going to allow us to send HTTP requests right here and test our endpoints right here inside VSCode. Just click on install, and you should see this icon right here in your activity bar, which is a Thunder Client icon. I'm going to click here, and now we have a place where we can actually send requests to our server. Now back in our server.js file, we actually are going to encounter a problem when we try to send requests to our server using Thunder Client. You see, when we define our port here as 3000, this means that our server is going to be running on localhost colon 3000. This is the URL that our server is going to be running on, right? And what the browser does is by default, it does not allow cross origin requests, which means it will only allow requests from localhost 3000 to access the API endpoints that we've made on this server. That means the Thunder client will not be able to send requests to our server. We don't want that. We want to allow cross origin requests so we can access this API endpoint that we made, right? So for that, we're going to install another package. Press Ctrl C inside the terminal if your server is running to close the server and to open the terminal again. And then we're going to type in npm install CORS. CORS stands for Cross Origin Resource Sharing, and it's what's going to allow us to actually enable cross origin requests inside our server. So here I'm going to import the CORS package just like we did for Express. It's the same syntax, and I just typed it in here. I'm just going to move all the imports up to the top of the file because that's the best practice. And then we're just going to type in a simple command, which is app.use, and then we're going to call the CORS function. So since we use the CORS function call without any additional arguments, it's going to allow cross-origin requests from any other URL, whether or not it is localhost 3000, which is what we want. Now we're going to go back into Thunder Client. Now that we've enabled CORS on our server, we're going to go back to Thunder Client, and let's create a new request by clicking on this button right here. And so we're going to use a get request. You must remember that in our API endpoint, we actually use the get method right here. So that means that our request must also be of the get type. And then over here inside our URL, we're going to type in HTTP / localhost and then 3000, the port 3000, and then followed by a slash, because we know that slash is the base URL that we define right here inside our API endpoint. So we did this, and now we're just going to click on send. Oh, oops. Okay, it seems like our server is not running. My bad. I forgot to run the server after the installation again. So we're just going to run it again. And now when we click on send, we have our message right here. Okay, that's perfect. That means we've got our server running, and we've got API endpoints working on our server as well. So that's all for today. We set up a basic Node server, and we were able to access API endpoints on it as well. I hope you enjoyed this video, and stay tuned for the next one, in which we're going to explore API endpoints in more detail.